That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay guys, before we get into the video, I have a couple things to say. One, thank y'all so much for absolutely destroying that like button on video after video after video. Y'all are making this channel get recommended to so many new listeners that we are gaining hundreds of subscribers a day. I mean, I never thought that this channel would see this much growth, but I am so excited for it. And also, I want to remind everyone, guys, the NBA season just started. We have so long to go, and the sample sizes that we are looking at are very small, that it's important for us to make sure that we are not overreacting towards these trends. What we need to be doing is we need to be taking a mental note. We need to be tracking these players. That way we can get those trends started. And if they continue as the season goes on, then we can finalize and say, you know what, that's most likely a real thing. But we cannot go out here and after 4 games, just write on these players and say, you know what, this is what he's going to be all year, because that's not how it works. We know shooting regresses. We know we see changes in players' rotation minutes. So yeah, here we are going to want to make sure that we are not overreacting to the very beginning of the season, but we are just more so taking note of these players and how they have been performing. Okay. So now let's get into this video, and let's start it off with our first emerging player. All these guys are going to be 24 years old or younger, and let's start it with Michael Porter Jr. Okay, so with Michael Porter Jr., he is currently 22 years old, and he is placed 23rd in fantasy points if we are looking at just a point scoring system. And here he's doing this by averaging 29 minutes, 19.5 points per game, 56% from the field, and he's had 12 threes already made in 2020 off of a decent percentage as well. And then he's averaging close to 7 rebounds, a steal, and a block and a half per game. So I will say 100% honesty here. I did not love Michael Porter Jr. in fantasy drafts. I know that I made recommendations for y'all to target him in your draft, but then his ADP continued to climb as hype built on him. And by the time we got to the the tip-off of the NBA fantasy basketball season, I was maybe thinking that Michael Porter Jr. had gone from being undervalued to a little bit overvalued. But clearly we are seeing him make that jump where he has a full-time role in this rotation. And on top of that, not only is he scoring points, that was my main concern with Michael Porter Jr., is that he was mainly going to be a point scorer first, and then we were not going to see him rack up statistics in the other categories. But now that he's also getting rebounds and the defensive statistics are so important, I think that this is what we're going to need to see from Michael Porter Jr. for him to continue to be a very viable play in fantasy leagues. We need to see the defensive statistics stay here. We need to make sure that he is averaging at least a block and a steal per game, as well as the efficiency from field staying the same. Obviously, his efficiency from beyond the arc is going to regress slightly, as that is over 50%. But if he can stay near this same range where he is just being highly efficient on the shots that he is deciding to take, then we are going to be looking at Michael Porter Jr. as someone that is going to contribute to multiple categories for you, just not one. And that is going to make him a player that is very exciting in fantasy. Okay, so now let's go to our next player who's truly emerging right now. This is going to be Jaylen Brown. Okay, so Jaylen Brown's a little bit older than a lot of players on this list. He is currently 24 years old, but he is currently ranked 13th in fantasy points scored in points leagues so far in 2020, and he's doing this off of 33 minutes a game, 28 points, extremely high efficiency, just like we saw with Michael Porter Jr., where he's shooting 56% from the field and 44% from 3. And what is amazing with Jaylen Brown, which is most likely not going to stick, this should regress, is his current 2 steals per game. But regardless, it looks like a couple players leaving Boston opened up a significant amount of minutes for Jaylen Brown, and his usage rate is increasing in this offense. Now, I would like to see a couple of the other categories a little bit nicer for Jaylen Brown, but I mean, here with him in 13th in our standings, I mean, I think that is going to be clearly enough to label him as a player that is emerging in his team. Okay, so now our next player, someone that is honestly probably going to be a sell high for me, is Brandon Ingram, who I know has been so exciting, guys. Currently 11th in fantasy points scored, and he's doing this off of a crazy 35 minutes per game. He has 23 points per game, shooting 41% from three. And then here, if we go to his other categories, this is what I really like to see. We like to see the 7 rebounds. We like to see the 6.5 assists, as well as a steal and half a block per game. But I'll say the reason I think maybe we want to be selling Brandon Ingram here is just because I think this has mainly been fueled off the minutes he has been seeing. If you look at the possessions per game for this rotation, I mean, really, we are seeing the coaching change, in my opinion, not be a good thing for the fantasy value that we're going to have from the New Orleans Pelicans. Yes, maybe the efficiency is going to go up across the board slightly, but the raw number of possessions is going down. This looks like a solid defensive team compared to where they were a year ago. So with Brandon Ingram, I think maybe we want to be using this as a sell high point, as he's drawing so many fantastic comparisons that I think he just cannot live up to. Okay, so now let's go to our next player. This is going to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek because he's been a star, but this is Jayson Tatum, currently only 22 years old and in 6th in fantasy points scored. And I know a lot of people have heard this a million times before, but I just want to highlight the fact that this is Jayson Tatum's 4th season in the NBA, and he is 22 years old. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. I know everybody talks about it every single day, so I'm not going to continue to speak on it. But anyway, Tatum is averaging 33 minutes per game, 23.5 points per game. He's shooting 45% from the field, and he has a ton of three-pointers. That's what we like to see. Not only does he have a decent percentage with those threes going in, but he's just putting up a ridiculous amount of shots there, which I love. And then if we go over to rebounds, 8 rebounds a game, the only thing that he's really not giving you is the assist, where he's averaging 3 assists a game, but he does have that steal and a half a block. So here with Jayson Tatum, I mean, truly emerging as a star. I think that we are going to continue to expect this type of production going forward. Very exciting for any Boston Celtics fan. Very exciting for anyone who drafted Jayson Tatum at the very beginning of their NBA fantasy basketball draft. All right, so now let's go to our next player, someone who has been fully emerging, and this is Colin Sexton. Okay, so Colin Sexton is currently 21 years old, and he's in 27th in fantasy standings. If we look at what he's been doing in his rotation, I mean, crazy minutes. 38 minutes per game, 25 points, and he has fantastic efficiency, 53% from the field, as well as 53% from three-point range. The only thing we're not necessarily seeing with Colin Sexton is the assist. He's currently dishing out 4 assists a game for this Cleveland Cavaliers rotation, and then he has about a steal and a half per game. I mean, Colin Sexton truly looks like he is playing on what seems to be a team getting better, and Colin Johnson himself looks like he has taken that next step. I mean, I really did not have that kind of hope in him, but if you did, if you drafted him, it looks like you did so for a reason. Okay, so now let's go to our next player. I know the player that everybody is here for, Sabonis. I mean, 24 years old. He's currently 5th in fantasy points scored. He's doing this off crazy minutes as well. 37 minutes, 22 points, 54% from the field, as well as shooting about a 3.5 per game. But what we love to see, what I talked about us drafting Jokic everywhere we could, is the assist numbers, averaging 7 assists per game. We know how valuable that is coming from the big man position. He also has a steal and a block per game. Love to see that. And our last player that we're going to talk about is going to be De'Aaron Fox, currently in 24th in fantasy standings. He's 23 years old, and how he has been doing this is ridiculous efficiency. I mean, we are seeing him come out here and on not so many minutes, averaging 3 rebounds, 20 points, 7 assists, and almost 50% from field and over 40% from 3. I mean, De'Aaron Fox, another player that looks like he is jumping up, having a more significant role in his rotation, and really being able to produce because of so. All right, now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. And yeah, that's all I got. I hope I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. Subscribe if you have not already. We are skyrocketing up the YouTube leaderboards.